deal with buy-sell agreements that are over list price?
For me, it's like any other deal. You do have to analyze the market. There are things to do with regards to establishing a time adjustment that may help you support your value. There are also trends and list to sale price ratios that you can establish. When you have a house that's sold over list price but did not appraise, I think Marty has a really good comment that I've used before, and the explanation is that the present short supply of available housing in the subject price range has produced a price higher than the listed amount, typical for this market condition. Price and value are not synonymous. Price can be dictated by the necessary amount to outbid current buyers in the market in order to secure the property. Value is determined by measuring the history of market prices paid by recent market participants for similar housing in the neighborhood.
For that, from a practical standpoint, how do you interpret? I think the average appraiser interprets perhaps a negative when he sees a price over list price, but the good appraiser will stand back and say, you know, it's very possible. That's what the market does. That's what happens. And if the one next door sold for a price that supports the higher price, the good appraiser will say that's what it is, and this is very common in the market. Keep in mind, when you're sitting across the table from the sellers, you ask them, do you want to sell this quick, or do you want 90 days, do you want 120 days? And if the answer is no, we need to move. So we'll price it at that. So I don't think they should be penalized for pricing it aggressively.
On the flip side of that, family transactions where it's below a value, do you say there is a purchase agreement involved, but it's they're selling it to them for either what they owe on it or they're giving them a good deal?
The appraiser's job is to appraise at market value, aside from a lender directive to say, you know, give me liquidation value or something to that effect. If I sell my house to my brother for $1, am I expecting the appraiser to appraise for the sale price? No, I'm expecting him to do market value.
Okay.
There's a statement all the way through the appraisal, and it defines arm's length transaction. And the appraisal is based on an arm's length transaction, but it asks you, when you analyze the sales agreement, do you believe it's an arm's length transaction? And when I have a sale between a brother and sister or an estate, my answer, I check the box, no, it's not. So it doesn't emulate market value.
Marty, is there more than one value for a property?
Good question. When the appraiser does an appraisal for a non-lending transaction, I usually tell the buyer a range in value. I usually tell them if I appraise it for 120, the market might have said that it's worth anywhere between 110 and 130. My best sale, if I have to hit what we call a pinpoint value, if you're asking me for a specific value, this is what it is. The answer to that question is yes. You wouldn't get 10 people to agree on the same price on a house. A lawnmower perhaps, but not a house. That won't happen. So it used to be, and I would perhaps disagree that the percentage is still correct, but 5% plus or minus. So a house could be worth $95,000 to $105,000. So ours is the only business where 2 and 2 could be 4.1 instead of 4.
How do appraised value and market value correlate?
Appraised value is a result of going through the appraisal process and analyzing all the sales data and estimating a value. And the value you're trying to estimate generally is market value, and that's the value between a knowledgeable seller and a knowledgeable buyer with typical motivation. There are other values. There are a liquidation value, I think we heard mentioned earlier. There are sometimes special instructions that we get from clients in a foreclosure situation that might result in the change of the value outcome during the analysis. So the appraised value generally in most mortgage transactions is trying to estimate the market value.
A good example just happened to me last week. A buyer bought lots 1 and 2 for $25,000 each. And the request for value was for both lots. In that case, both lots combined are not going to sell individually for the same price. So the highest and best use is what we have to go by, which is what defines market value. And in this case, as soon as he bought lots and annexed them together for one site, he created a different value. And I had to be very specific on the appraisal. What value do you want? Do you want the value individually or as together? And we did them together. But like Matt said, I think at last count there are 44 definitions. The courts think there's 44 definitions of value. Insurance value, cost value, market value. And it's spelled out very clearly in the appraisal, in the 1004 appraisal form, exactly what value we're looking for.
Okay. Mandy, what are your most frequently flagged conditions, and are there items that can easily be remedied prior to appraisal?
Yes. Well, when I think of doing, for example, conventional appraisals, I think condition has to play a big part of it. Same thing with FHA and RD, condition and repairs. You know, with the FHA and RD, you're looking for more safety type issues that might have to do with lead paint or electrical issues. But aside from condition, probably the biggest thing to pay attention to prior to doing an appraisal is the zoning. When you have properties that are either illegal or maybe non-conforming, a lot of that stuff needs to be addressed before you even get to that point.
What about just conventional, not FHA, RD, that have the more strict conditions? What are, just on a conventional, what are some of the, other than zoning, is there anything in particular?
I don't know. What else would you add to that?
Most frequently, I've had situations where people are purchasing homes to rehab them, and if they're not safe enough to live in, they're not livable or safe. Generally, that's a problem in most mortgage situations.
Yeah, those are cash transactions.
Right.
Yeah.
So I do experience that, though. That's probably the most common thing. Some can be remedied. Rails or a new stair, maybe there's no staircase to the basement. Well, that's going to be an issue, and stairs can be put in. So safe and livable is a good guideline to start with.
So heat, water, electrical, what else are some of the major things that make it livable condition?
Intact, that there's not a hole in the floor.
Safety issue, yeah.
Safety issues,
Sure.
just things that are just common sense. You wouldn't want your mom to fall off the patio or those sorts of things, and not to a small level, but significant enough that would make it difficult to live in the property.
Mm-hmm.